And statistics are showing that about half of our children in the Sacramento region are not reading at the 4th grade level. At the 4th grade level. They have a 70% more chance of not graduating than somebody who is reading at grade level. I didn't even know it was that high. Pretty startling. So there's a direct correlation between your reading levels and your ability to graduate. Now again, go back that path. The individual that graduates from high school, maybe goes on to college or whatever, versus those that drop out. What are the likelihoods of the contributions of each one of those individuals? So there's a direct relationship to the health of our communities simply by supporting and getting individuals, children, up to grade level. So they're called star readers, and nonprofits sign up and they help and assist children to bring them up to grade level readings. And they actually have targets. They're going to monitor this over time. So this is an example, one example in the capital region of how the local United Way takes those general funds and expends them. Okay, what did we do in 2012 out of this we've talked about? We raised over $6.6 million. And it's actually been, it's just dropped a little bit in the last couple of years. And right now, statewide, 14% of us state workers are giving. That means that 86% aren't. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our target. Now, we didn't bring specific statistics for CalSTRS and General Services today, but others are higher than that and some are lower. But the whole point is that we have 280,000 employees, and just do the math, 86% aren't giving. So that's our target. All right? All right, I want to talk about then the why CSECC, about the benefits of payroll deduction. History has shown, statistics have shown, that we are likely to give 6 to 7 times more the amount of money to a nonprofit through a payroll deduction system than through individual check writing or what I call episodic giving. Let me repeat that. We are likely to give 6 to 7 times the money directly to a nonprofit or nonprofits through a payroll deduction system than through individual check writing. And if you think about it, it's just kind of fairly intuitive. Could you repeat that one more time? I'd say, when we repeat that, we are likely to give 6 to 7 times the amount of money to a nonprofit or nonprofits through a payroll deduction system than we would on what I call episodic giving or individual check writing. You know, you get the mailers once in a while from a nonprofit, but if you think about it, it's pretty intuitive. It's automatically withdrawn. Remember the Energizer Bunny? You fill it out once, you sign up, it just keeps going, month after month after month. One and done. It's simple. I forget about it. I've been giving for so long, I don't even think about it. It eliminates the need to write checks. How likely are any one of us to write a check every single month if we're not getting a bill? Probably not too likely. And it also eliminates the needs for the nonprofit to process those checks. And it deducts little amounts that fits into our budget. Yes, it's nice for the first time in a while we have a full paycheck. And we make a decent living, but we're all on budgets. You know, and we're more likely to give $10 a month, right, than to write a check for $120. Or we're more likely to give $20 a month than to write a check for $240. Or $30 a month, right, as opposed to $360, or whatever it is you can afford. Even $5 a month as opposed to writing a $60 check. That's a bite out of our budget. So it just kind of makes sense that why payroll deduction systems yield more money. And this is a real key factor. They provide a consistent cash flow to the nonprofits that they use for budgeting and program planning purposes. You ask any nonprofit, remember I talked about nonprofits love CSECC. This is why. And if you ask them, because fundraising is very expensive. Any of you have experience at fund development, fundraising in the nonprofit world? It's expensive. And we're basically providing all the marketing for nonprofits. I was involved in I'll leave names out, but I was involved in a nonprofit, and we did a fundraising event with a very major professional sports team. We got a check for $10,000 and we lost money. You know, it's just fundraising is expensive. We all know that. So the nonprofits are told at the beginning of the year the money that they can expect to get through the CSECC payroll deduction system. And they know it's very consistent and they can count on it. So in their budgeting and their program services and how many they could serve into these areas, they have a pretty good idea they're going to get that money, as opposed to the episodic giving, the mailings. They go up and down, fundraisers, whatever. They're very expensive. So it's a great way, and the nonprofits love CSECC, and it's tax deductible. So you feel fairly equipped with this, because this is a very important piece for you to be able to explain to your colleagues about why. Because they'll just say, Michael, I can just give directly to the nonprofits myself. So let's talk about that, which is the concept of overhead. There is a cost of doing business. Nothing is free. And I'll make the statement up front, CSECC is self-funded. The CSECC campaign and whole program is self-funded. There are no taxpayer dollars involved, nor should there be. But there's expenses. It doesn't come out, it's not free, it doesn't come out of thin air. So what is it? Currently it's at 15% for all the 29 PCFDs, meaning 15 cents of the dollar comes off the top to fund the whole program, the whole campaign. Where does that money go? A small piece of it reimburses victims' comp. Remember, they oversee the entire program. They have a body or half a body or some resources dedicated, and it's funded through the campaign. It's not funded through taxpayer dollars, nor should it be. The rest of it really goes into funding the campaign and things like our donor resource guides, our forms, the training materials, the posters, the website, everything associated with the campaign. There are costs to those things, and it goes into funding those things. So it's 15% off the top to cover those items. Then there's one additional charge. The state controller charges 31 cents per transaction. In other words, per payroll deduction. So for every person every month, when a payroll deduction is executed, they charge 31 cents to recoup their cost. Now, you may think that's high, you may think that's low, but let me ask you this. When you go to the ATM machine and you put in your card and you withdraw money, unless it's free, I have a credit union, but if like the private banks, what do they typically charge? $2.50, $3 per transaction. So 31 cents per transaction, they're just basically recovering their cost. It's pretty reasonable. So the question you have then, you say, Michael, well, now wait a minute, you said it's 15%, but now we also have this 31 cents per transaction, so it's not really 15%. You're very smart. What I did to convert the transaction into a percent is this. This year I went in and actually got the spreadsheet that showed every single person, every state worker that gave last year. It's nearly 40,000. I actually physically had the spreadsheet on my computer. It took me almost 2 minutes to scroll down through 40,000 records. And then did an average. Anybody guess what the average monthly deduction is? $10, low. 20, high. 15, right about there. It's a little over $14. Last year, the giving, the 6.6 million. I'm going to come back to that statistic because I have another reason for saying it. But for this purpose, so I just rounded it to $15 to keep it simple. So if $15 is the average deduction per month, I divided that by into the 31 cents. Okay, so that's the average, because obviously 31 cents of a $5 deduction is a higher percent than 31 cents of a $20 deduction, right? But the average is 15. So I divided that into the 31 cents, which is about 2%. So you add the 2% and the 15% on average then. The overhead rate for the CSECC campaign is 17 cents. Excuse me, 17%, which means in total, and this is important because you're going to get asked this from your colleagues, 17 cents comes off the top and 83 cents goes directly to the nonprofits on average. Now the question you will get quite often, you say, well, listen, Michael, I can just write the check and it goes directly to the nonprofit and 100% goes to fund services. Is that correct? No. Why? Because there's a cost. Nothing is totally free. Somebody has to open that envelope. Somebody has to pull out that check. Somebody has to take it and deposit it to the bank. Somebody has to account for that check. Nothing is ever free. There's a cost to doing business. But a 17% overhead rate is very, very good. Really anything most under 25%, under 20% in the nonprofit world is very, very good. So let's just say, for example, 100 of us decide to give $10 to nonprofit A. I'll keep it generic. So we all write a check for $10, $1,000 goes to the nonprofit, and they've got to process 100 checks. If the alternative B is we all give $10 to that same nonprofit through a payroll deduction system, they get one check for $1,000. So they process 100 checks for $1,000. They process one check for $1,000. Which do you think the nonprofit would prefer? The one check. The cost of, I'm just kind of using this as an example. And that's why, when we say, you ask a nonprofit, would they rather have people writing you checks or a payroll deduction system? And hands down, they will say a payroll deduction system. Because bottom line is this, even with the overhead rate, they're going to get more money. Now we have, just to kind of add further clarification, Forbes magazine published this article in November of 2012. And they basically rated the top 100 fund developers in the country that raise funds and disperse funds in the nonprofit world. Who do you think was their #1 most efficient organization in this field? Who's our partner? United Way. They were the #1 most efficient fund developer and distributor of funds in the nonprofit world in the country. And they're our partners. And that's why they're our partner. They do it very well. Yes, sir?
Do we have any kind of numbers on that 17%? How much is it promoting, soliciting more donations versus actual processing of donations? Because, if a good portion of that is promoting, then actually you're creating more donations out of that overhead
right.
versus actually processing.
The question was how much of the 17% is really attributed to processing in the campaign versus promoting the campaign. I don't have an exact figure, but I can give you close. Because remember the transaction fee from state controller, which is process, that's roughly 2%. And it's my understanding victims' comp gets no more than 1%. So, and then that's 3% again. And then there's some at the United Way, some of it's process. I've been told roughly, I think it's around 8 to 9% that's actually the campaign, and maybe 6 to 7% that's actual processing, roughly. But over half of it. Yeah. Yes. Yes. I'm fairly comfortable saying over half of it goes to the campaign, promoting. Yeah. Which is like the gentleman is saying, you're promoting, then you're actually promoting to get more funds coming in. Yes, ma'am?
Does United Way get a percentage also, or is that included in the 15%?
The question is, does United Way get, it's included in the 15%. And there's 29 United Ways across the state, and I don't know the exact formula for how it's divided up, but some of it goes to, you said processing, but a good chunk of it goes to the promotional. The materials you have in front of you today are paid for out of that 15%. Good questions. And this is very important. You need to be, you feel fairly comfortable, you can talk about payroll deduction systems, overhead, and again, bottom line is why the CSECC campaign and the partnership we have with United Way is a very efficient way, a very effective way of getting money into the hands of the nonprofits. Because this is a key piece of what you'll get asked about. If a person chooses to write a check to the nonprofit, that's fine, of course it is. But overall, the nonprofits are going to get more money through CSECC than through individual check writing. So how do we compare? Here is it with the other two major states, Texas and New York, and their state charitable campaigns. So I have 15% there, even if you add the 2%, you say California is roughly 17%, we're right in parity with Texas and New York. So we're right in there with the other two big states. And again, anything under 20%, which is what Forbes pointed out United Way is, they're very, very, very efficient organization at fund development and fund distribution. Okay, so the bottom line is this, that between the nonprofit world and healthy communities is that CSECC is a very good bridge and a very good option. So do you feel fairly comfortable you can talk about this and about the value of nonprofits and why CSECC is a good link to our healthy communities. Good. That's why we're here. So there are 3 ways we talk about being involved. You can give of your time, you can give of your talent, or you can give of your treasure. Time, talent, or treasure. Time meaning just your hours. Remember, 1 hour volunteer work on average is worth $22. That's pretty good value. You can give of your talent. You may be a skilled laborer, you may be a doctor, you may be a teacher, an accountant, an attorney. That you can give specifics of your skill sets to your community. Or you can give of your treasure, your money, your resources. So when we talk about our treasures, here's where I talk about the monthly donation is $15. And this is why. Basically, and I knew this intuitively because I input every form I bring back to the office, I input into a system. So I've seen as, you know, the amounts that the campaign is really made up of $5, $10, and $15 donations. It's not made up of $25, $30, $100 donations. It's little bits that add up to a big amount. And when you're talking to that 80, you know, those individuals that aren't giving, you know, that's why. Just start with $5. Because once per person is in, they're likely to stay in. You know, we're kind of weathered the major economic storms of the last 5 years. You know, $5, I say, you know, that's 1 Starbucks foo-foo drink a month. And I drink decaf coffee, one cup a day. But you know, you got people in there offering a Frappuccino with extra whip and no foam and Brazilian cinnamon. I don't know, 13 things you attribute to a drink for $5, which I love Starbucks, by the way. But the point is that $5, remember, $5 feeds a breakfast to a family of 5 for 2 weeks because nonprofits are a good value. Remember, they take $1 and turn it into $10 to $20 worth of value, of output. I said Wall Street can't guarantee you that kind of return on your money. So that's the message to, you know, to that person who's considering, you know, just start with something small. However, for those that have been maybe giving for a long time or they've climbed their career, we have what's called the leadership donor. And this is sort of an elite class of people that give $1,000 or more a year, $84 a month. So if someone was giving 75 already or 80, you know, for just a little bit more money, they can actually kind of move themselves into a specific class of individuals. And they're recognized as a leadership donor. We give them a little CSECC bear, and you know, it's a special club. But the point is, most of the giving is down in the smaller levels. And once people start giving, and then once they're in, as they advance in their career, they're likely to increase their donations. So it's just getting them in the door, if they choose. So this is something specific to Sacramento, I'm going to say, especially for those that might be seeing this around the state. We have a service here at the local United Way that helps you if you have a group that wants to do volunteer. So you've got a team, you want to volunteer, this is the man you call. And again, I want to emphasize, this is for the Sacramento, the capital region, not around the state, or Cole will be flooded with calls from all around the place. I call him the Colester. He's a very, very fine, cool young man. And what Cole does, he just started it last year. If you have a group that's interested in volunteering, you can contact Cole at volunteer, that email site. Or you can also go online there if you want to just kind of learn about volunteering and what's available and get some information first. But you can call Cole, and he will help arrange whatever kind of volunteer service you and your group want to perform. And he doesn't just give you a name and a number and say, good luck to you. He really does complete service to learn about what kind of service. Maybe you have a specific organization. Maybe you have just a specific service. And he can help link that up and coordinate the entire event for you. What's also coming up, again, this is for Sacramento, on September 13th, and I've got flyers here if you want to pick one up, but on September 13th, it's called Day of Caring here in Sacramento, and there are 26 individual projects that are going to be executed on that day. They can take up to, they said 350 plus regional volunteers. So if you want to volunteer, and there's information on here, there's the website, you can go on and get more information. But it's 2 weeks from tomorrow. They're going to be staffing 26 various projects around the Sacramento region that you can volunteer. It's a great way to bring out your kids, you know, show them the concepts of giving something back. So this is something very specific, but I also wanted to point out, again, for the Sacramento region, That Cole is your man. He's the manager of volunteer services, and he can help arrange a group volunteer activity. It's really, really cool. He did almost 100 of them last year, and I no doubt that number is going to go up. Okay? So the bottom line is this, that CSECC is a state program that gives you, us, we, state employees, an easy way to support our communities and become part of a great team. Okay? Does that give you some fuel, some ammunition, some gold nuggets? So now let's talk about the details. I want to talk about your role as a key campaigner. As I mentioned, this is an educational campaign. What does that mean, Michael? It means that your job is to educate individuals about what the program is about. It's a state program, payroll deduction system. Inform them of our options. When we walk through the form itself, you'll see all the various options that are available to state workers, and then to show them how to actually execute it using the form, if they choose. You can highlight the importance and value of nonprofits. You have some good information in your packets today. Demonstrate the benefits of CSECC. We just walked through that. Why CSECC is a very efficient and effective way of collecting major amounts of money to support our nonprofit world. So, our goal is this, what we call 100% informed ask. While you're not asking for money per se, you are trying to expose the program to your fellow colleagues to see if they might be interested in actually donating and starting to donate. So your job is to not just pass out forms and booklets and say, I'll be back in 2 weeks. And again, I'm going to show you in a couple of minutes about how you can execute this educational campaign in a 1-hour setting. So here are your key campaigner roles and responsibilities. Number 1, I know it sounds kind of ad nauseum, but this is trying to underscore, it's 100% ask. If you walk away with nothing else today, is to understand if you simply pass out forms and donor guides and don't do something of an educational nature, you've really not completed your task. And you've done a disservice to your fellow employees. I know you're all busy. I know you're all challenged. But there are ways that this can be done. And you're going to get my phone number at the end of this thing. Any way I can help you, I'll come, I'll make a presentation. I can support you in any way I can. I mean, Jeff is your local campaign liaison. He's here to help you. But we work as a team. We'll do whatever we can to help you be successful. Conduct educational events. I'm going to show you one in a minute. Distribute and collect the forms and correct them. One of the key things, again, depends on how you're set up here between being a key campaigner to, I don't know if you're going to also do the auditing function, but you're the first point of contact with that form and that person. It's very important that you look at that form and make sure there's no mistakes. It's filled out correctly. The last thing we want to do is have Jeff pick it up, take it back to the office, or any one of us, and find a mistake. And we have to bring it back, or worse yet, it gets misinterpreted, because all these forms get key entered into the system, and then information then gets transmitted to the state controller. We want it to be accurate. Assist your campaign chair in any way you can. And here in Sacramento, we just ask you, we had a statewide kickoff on August 21st. You may have had events around the state. We had over 120 nonprofits here in the west steps of our capital last week. Very successful. So does that kind of give you a general idea of what your responsibilities are? All right, here's some campaign best practices. Again, helpful hints, not prescriptions, but helpful hints. Number 1, again, conduct that educational campaign. And number 2 is to just express, remember we talked about what nonprofits do? They provide that niche between the private sector and the public sector. Imagine our communities without nonprofits, minus that 8.1 billion hours of volunteer time. What would happen? Is the private sector or even the government going to pick that up? Probably not. Many people, my mother may have never had that service brought to her and helped her recuperate, and then she went and gave back, had it not been for that nonprofit. Believe in the concept of CSECC and nonprofits. If you haven't gotten from me that I believe in this, I'm committed, I failed you. I failed you miserably. Tell your story. Make it personal. Just show your own personal enthusiasm. But again, it's an individual choice. You know, I always say, this is not CSECC religion. You know, praise CSECC, you know. It's not Guido. We don't twist arms. I'm Italian on my mother's side. We're here to just inform and to educate and let people make their own decisions. Do not take rejection personally. You're representing the campaign, and a person could have had a bad experience with a campaign. They could have had a bad experience with a nonprofit. They could be going through a very difficult time in their lives right now, any number of things. You know, and if they kind of get in your face or whatever it is, just, you know, I'm sorry, can I answer any questions? Is there anything I can do? And if they say no, just say thank you very much for your time. Always say thank you. Last year, I had a pledge form come back, and I put it up in my office. A person had taken a red pen and in capital letters wrote decline, 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 19 times. 19 times. I think I got the message. They didn't want to participate. Okay, fine. I got it after 2 declines. Everybody has their own perspective on this. We're always respectful of people's time, energy, their perspective, whatever's going on in their life. You just say thank you and move on. Make it personal. Tell your story and communicate throughout the campaign. All right, this is what I've been promising you. And I got proof that this works. This is a sample presentation, not a prescriptive, but a sample that you can use as a template. If you can bring in your campaign chair, the department campaign chair, if you want some opening remarks. Or maybe you have a manager come in, manager of your office, do some opening remarks, tell their story, why they're supportive of the campaign. Get a guest speaker. I highly encourage you to bring in a nonprofit. They'll come at the drop of a hat. They need 10, 15 minutes. You tell them you got 15 minutes, and they'll do it. And they'll tell their story, and they got their brochures and whatever. Sometimes they have somebody who's a recipient of the service. Very powerful in a very short time. Present your campaign information. Now you've been loaded with a number of things today about nonprofits, and especially about CSECC and the benefits of CSECC and why it's a good option. Show a video if applicable. We have a couple of things coming. As I mentioned, this training is being videotaped. We just completed a videotape. It's 1.5 minutes of Secretary Karen Baker of Volunteerisms, who's the campaign chair, and my secretary, Secretary Brian Kelly of the new California State Transportation Agency. And they do a nice little exchange dialogue thing about the campaign. It's kind of a high-level marketing thing. And that's going to be on CSECC website any day now. I just turned the DVD in. So there's a couple of options. Or sometimes maybe organizations have done your own maybe video. But if you, or some kind of video you wanted to show. Always say thank you. How did I start the session today? I thanked you and welcomed you. And then talked about those who were voluntold. No, but I said thank you, and I'm going to close with thank you. Be respectful of people's times, wishes. Again, this is not CSECC religion, but it is a state program, and your job is to educate.